So with that said, we can get this thing kicked off. Thanks everybody for joining us on another illustrious Genius Wednesday. Really excited to dive in. There's a lot going on in the markets. I was just looking yesterday, and a few of you were on the call with me, and I was getting alerts about, different cryptocurrencies just spiking. Dash, one of them specifically, that was going for $89, and I think got as high as $134 on the phone, then to drop back down to $118 just as fast as it went up. So I love this time in crypto where there's extreme volatility because there's a lot to discuss and there's a lot going on, a lot of factors contributing to the volatility. And it's on us here at Genius Wednesday to go through and figure out what is causing this and where we anticipate it going from here. So with that said, I'm going to pass it over to the one and only Mr. Steve Kwan.
Hi, good afternoon. So I guess for the past 4 weeks specifically, for all of the Genius Wednesday, I had prepared slides and prepared charts and pointed out specific assets that were making rounded bottoms and had started to kind of push their head above water, where the second half of 2019, to say the least, was not very friendly for anything not named Bitcoin. So week by week and month by month, I had picked out some and shown, empirical evidence, at least in my eyes, of this was the time to do it. And this being the past few weeks where you really would be able to catch 90% of the move, and some of those included but not limited to were Dash, Ethereum Classic, Litecoin, Ethereum, and I guess those were really the 6 majors. Oh, Bitcoin Cash as well. And lo and behold, over the past week, this week, those are really been the pillars of strength. I mean, as Jeremy said, a lot of people messaged me like, hey, how do you know about that? I didn't know. If I absolutely 100% knew, I'd be, God, which I'm not. But I guess having looked at enough assets and different asset classes over time, when you see the same formation and you see everyone so negative on something, it becomes very easy to essentially pick winners out, and the littlest ripple will cause not only people to pile in, but those that are short to get out at the same time. So I believe Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum Classic, Dash, Litecoin. Dash and Satoshi Vision have clearly been the leaders. I would say that the old guard of Litecoin and Ethereum definitely has some slingshot effect left in it, but if anyone is unclear on what I've talked about, I guess you can go through the recordings of the past 3 or 4 pieces, and you'll see that what I've said and how it's come to fruition. And I guess that was one of the things that I was asked to do in the Genius Wednesdays, was come up with things that are monetizable and trustworthy and kind of build a track record and build credibility. And if anyone doubts my skill set, I would urge you to listen to the past 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces and how I've said that all of this was happening in pretty short order. And now that it's happening, I would essentially, once something's working, I just try to do more of what's working and less of what's not. So I don't see any reason to change that. I would anticipate that in fairly short order, Bitcoin dominance will move to about 50%, probably, I don't know, a month or two. And people will be like, whoa, what happened? And it just, when the boat gets so heavy one way, then the shift becomes very quick the other way, and all of a sudden one has an industry again. Whereas Bitcoin dominance at 75%, there's not much of an industry, unfortunately. So on that note,
Agreed.
I would pass the microphone back to Jeremy or whomever would like to add to that.
Yeah, sure. Look, for anybody who's just joining, the intention of this call specifically, and this is for the listeners and some of the paid users here, this is what we're doing, right? We're filling this team with a tremendous amount of geniuses, coming from a lot of different angles. Steve, who was just speaking as an example, comes from capital markets, trading futures and commodities, and is pretty incredible at doing so. Now coming into the crypto industry over the last few years has really honed in on some of the same things and analysis that apply to these other industries and asset classes, and realizing that if you can get ahead of the curve and apply some of these same things in crypto, you can really anticipate with a high degree of certainty where the market is going. Now, it's never perfect, of course, but if you listen to the previous recordings, which will be available, you'll see, as Steve mentioned, that he's right many of the times. But we also have some other geniuses on the call as well. So I'd love for a few people to kind of chime in here and give maybe their analysis of where we're standing today as far as the crypto markets, and give some of their analysis and maybe some of the reasoning from their perspective as to why what's happening today is happening. If anybody wants to recommend or start it off, Tim House is sweet. It's been a little while, so if you want to kick it off, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure, Jeremy. Thanks. I really just echoing what Steve said. We found support in the 6,500 area. Settled down there. There just wasn't any more selling, and then we started to move back up and kind of broke that resistance in the 75 to 7,900 area, and so it's been a kind of a bullish wave technically. Really, it was, and one curious thing that started it was the Iranian situation, which proved to be a short-lived concern for the equities markets, which have continued to make new highs. That ended up being maybe the sort of fake catalyst to get people to pay attention to the crypto spot, but then as that situation, as the fears there have been allayed, crypto has retained its bid. So very interesting that it needed some sort of excuse to get the rally started, but even after the story dissipated, the rally kept going. So that tells you that there are other underlying factors as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I tend to look at the crypto markets as a large sleeping bear, and I don't mean that in the sense of a bear market per se, right? I mean that in the sense that it tends to be that a lot of times the crypto markets, especially Bitcoin, just really trades flat, and it's not very exciting for typically an extended period of time, right? And then a lot of the riffraff, if you will, or a lot of the retail traders exit, as well as some of the sophisticated traders, because it's just not interesting. There's not a lot of money to be made. But it seems like once there's an event, or an event trigger, as we call it in Coin Genius, that basically pokes that bear and awakens it, that's when it really starts this ripple effect that does a lot of really interesting things. And then more news articles come out, and people are pumping and dumping, and people are trying to influence the markets, and it gets really interesting. But it's fairly certain that all it takes is, to your point, one event. It seems like the issues in Iran actually were the precursor to all of this.
Yeah, this is Samson. I just want to chime in on there, because I think that when we look at just market sentiment and how people are feeling, cryptos are really like a health check or a pulse on people's confidence in the quote unquote traditional market. And so I think that as we saw gold futures go up a little bit, and we saw the fear, the uncertainty, and the doubt in the traditional system, because with the political system with Iran, that is, God only knows, it's anyone's guess why that started, where it's going to go, the reasoning behind that. And I think that because social sentiment and how people feel and how people are reacting, it's not more viral. It just has the capacity to go viral nowadays. And that's just a matter of the Iranians they arrested one of the gentlemen who posted the video of the airplane being shot down, because he posted it on Twitter or social media. And so part of it is a reaction from the traditional powers that be that you can't really suppress information, that there's a free flow of information in an interconnected world. And I think that we're on that cusp of people realizing that, unlike in 2008, during the crisis of 2008, social media wasn't as embedded in our everyday habits in society. We didn't even have podcasts, number one. But now it's when something happens, doesn't matter what part of the world, the entire world can know about it at the speed of Twitter, at the speed of their thumbs. And I think that I agree with you that day to day, the crypto markets tend to be very boring, but it is that, I wouldn't say that canary in the mine shaft or in the mine, but it's that pulse on here's what people are thinking and feeling, and here's how they're responding at the speed of connectivity. So I think that part of it is we're going to continue to see the traditional markets recognize that, hey, we understand what war drums sound like and what effects they tend to have on regular markets, on traditional markets. I think that they're looking towards the cryptocurrency market just as, you know, it's a hedge. It might be a life preserver that a sinking economy or an economy that at risk has never had before. And so they're actually looking at it through a new lens, because at the end of the day, no one wants to be blindsided. No one wants to be caught off guard. And so I think the most recent political events and political events in the future will also show that, or demonstrate that people are interested, not only from the retail perspective, but also from the institutional perspective, in what do they need to do to preserve their wealth? What do they need to do to preserve their economic well-being? And that might not be to, just leave it all in your 401k and see what happens. It might be, hey, we need to investigate these digital assets as a whole.
Samson, I would completely agree. One of the things that I kind of check is sentiment among, average folks. And, being here with Coin Genius, I'm getting more and more questions here around what are digital assets? What should I be sentiment about wag the dog, seeing that this came directly after impeachment, and all of this was probably brewing before then, but wasn't getting as many news cycles. And then we also have upcoming things happening with China, right? There's some new trade deal discussions. We're seeing other regional areas start to pick up blockchain projects. We're starting to see Visa move billions of dollars into digital assets. So from a sentiment standpoint, I'd say that 2020 is off to a really good start.
Yeah, because
go ahead.
Oh no, this is Samson again. Because in the midst of this, like, the SEC came out with some news on Telegram, but just from my own personal level of awareness, I didn't think that got nearly as much interest. Or people were not nearly as concerned of the SEC investigating Telegram as they're concerned with what are the politics happening at this moment, particularly in, as you mentioned, with China and our trade war, because it's how do they keep if your traditional assets or if your traditional portfolios are at risk, what are your options?
Yeah, there's some really interesting things happening in the crypto space right now. So it's really interesting to watch. I mean, I know that Steve earlier mentioned a few projects, especially the ones that were some of the biggest winners over the last 24, 48 hours, which are Dash and BSV. So maybe we can talk about some specific assets, including those. I mean, Dash as well as Divi. I know you've done some research internally about those two being the top two masternode projects. They've done extremely well. Divi did extremely well last week, and then Dash, one of the top two. I believe it raised about 43% 24-hour period of time, maybe even more. And that was one of the ones we were tracking yesterday while we were on the call. And then you have BSV, which is the whole Craig Wright, Satoshi Nakamoto debacle and court case. There's some very interesting things happening with that case and why BSV is moving so high. There's high speculation around the fact that Craig Wright is eventually going to get the last piece of the puzzle. He sent out some cryptic tweets basically saying that he's getting the last few pieces of the private keys that unlock the Tulip Trust, which contains over 1 million Bitcoin in it. And the speculation in the trading community and all the trading groups, whether it's paid or unpaid, are basically saying if it comes to fruition and he actually does have access to that Tulip Trust and he proves that he can get access to the million Bitcoin, BSV will actually overtake Bitcoin specifically, because then that solidifies that he truly is Satoshi Nakamoto. So a very interesting thing happening right now. There's a lot of speculation around that, as I said. We'll see if that comes to fruition. Most people think it's the pump and dump between him and Calvin Ayre that comes from a background of Bodog and some interesting activities in the background there. And then you have, like I said, Dash, which, a lot of people, including some of the folks on our team, think kind of masternodes, and that whole category might be on the decline. However, those projects specifically over the last few weeks have done incredibly well. So anyway, just throwing out two topics we can discuss as it relates to specific assets. Love to hear your guys' thoughts around both of those. And especially with the controversial topic of, can BSV, even with that news, overtake Bitcoin, or is that impossible at this point?
Can I add something?
Please do.
I'm more of a technical person, so I get that if someone were given 1 million Bitcoins, would that most likely increase that person's market cap? Absolutely. But I also have followed masternode projects for a long time, and because many have become flops, I think that it's kind of been throw the baby in with the bathwater, where some have, but I guess I look at the first to bring that whole technology to light. And I guess you have Bitcoin being the granddaddy of the whole sector. Then you have Ethereum being the granddaddy of the smart contract sector. And I guess Ethereum Classic being the grandson daddy of the sector. And you have then Dash kind of being the head of the masternode project. I think the one unique thing about Dash, and I think I heard it from Dustin, if I'm not mistaken, last talk, was the top 10 projects all involve some sort of mining. Now, Dash is unique because it's part masternode, part actual mining. So I would still echo what was said about a week ago and say that, to be honest, I don't know I couldn't tell you exactly why something went up. That'd be kind of foolish. I mean, unless I was the person putting the capital behind it. But I also believe that most of these assets, not named BTC, got so pummeled at the end of last year especially, that for something to be an industry, you need to have life in other things than Bitcoin. Now, all of a sudden, this past week, I'm not hearing as many people say, "Oh, I'm just buying Bitcoin and taking it off the market." Why? What happened? Why do they not believe that anymore? Well, I'm guessing many still do, but that's not the quote-unquote story of the week. So I generally try to look at what the story is, and this week it seems to be, oh wow, Bitcoin Satoshi Vision's up 100%, or Dash is up 80%, or lesser stories like, oh wow, Ethereum's up 50%, oh wow, Litecoin's up 40%. I mean, let's be honest that the difference between Litecoin and Bitcoin, they're both on Coinbase. You can pretty much cash a few $100,000 in the blink of an eye. What's the major difference? Well, one starts with an L, one starts with a B. Does that mean that the ones, I guess the ones that haven't had that explosive up move yet are the next ones to look at? I do believe that the masternode space still has quite a bit of life in it. I just think that people need to do their own research on any investment, and I would advise that to any person, small or big, crypto or commodity, equity or Bitcoin. It doesn't matter. if something's going up, why are you buying it? Why am I buying it? If something's going down, why are you selling it? I think it's important for anyone involved, especially in the crypto space, which has, I would say, far less news flow and far more decentralized information than most other asset classes, that people should try to research on the story of, well, if you like something at 100 and you missed it, now it's 300, is it still something for you? And I think that is what attracts people to crypto. When you see BSV up 300% or you see Dash triple in a week, it gets people thinking, oh, why didn't I do that? But the question is that move done? And if it is, what is the next idea?
Thanks, Steve. Okay, so I know we have a few folks. There we go. Matt Shellhouse is on the line here. Matt, would you like to weigh in with this week's analysis?
Sure. I guess regarding the market in terms of where price is going, looks like we're at a key inflection point. In fact, we're above it, and I think that it's definitely looking more and more bullish. So that's one thing. Two, regards to what you guys have been talking about masternodes. Previously, I worked for basically a guys who had a big portfolio of masternodes, and I remember. I'll just kind of reiterate what I said a while ago was that I look at masternodes as a high yield or dividend yielding like a junk bond, if you will, and in I guess like at the end of 2017, 2018, when we saw like the big pump in masternodes, when the market and there's money coming in to the crypto space, masternodes are probably assets that will probably outperform the benchmark. And let's just say the benchmark is BTC, simply because they're like a small cap, micro cap, or a like a junk bond, right? People want to buy things that have the capacity to grow in value a lot. However, the fact that these things are dividend yielding assets, right? Like high dividend. When there's no new money coming into the market, what they are is they're just inflation or money printers effectively, because they're rewarding basically people who are holding the stake, right? Like enough of the underlying coin to have a staking masternodes, but there's the underlying node or the underlying coin isn't producing anything. When I say producing, meaning it's not generating any revenue like a company. So all it is just producing more of itself. So in an environment where there isn't new money coming in to the entire crypto space, masternodes, the likelihood of them going to zero is the highest. So like when I looked this morning at a chart of Dash, and I saw that it just ripped up. In terms of having some support for like a bullish thesis, I would say that hey, if we start seeing masternodes percolating, that is definitely a great kind of bullish indicator to kind of support like where we are right at this key inflection point in pricing. Sorry if that was long-winded, but there you go. And I would call the whole space too. I think when I jumped on, Jeremy was talking a speculative hype machine. So as it's like Soros had a concept called reflexivity, where like asset bubbles perpetuate themselves by. It's like the more people, more money comes in, the more it becomes a self feeding kind of mechanism that kind of feeds itself. So it's like reflexive. More money comes in, the more interest there is in the space, and as price continues to go higher, the probability of it going higher, becomes more likely. But there's my blowhard kind of big picture perspective.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that, but I think from like a fundamental standpoint, I wanted to get Dustin's opinion on like masternodes and POS versus other coins and crypto versus like proof of work, because he had made a comment the other day that I've been thinking about, and I just kind of want to know where you think fundamentally that all stems from. Because yeah, granted, some of these POS masternode proof of stake, by the way, is POS. Masternode coins ripped, but what does that really all mean at the end of the day? That could just be a bunch of committed investments that need to make a payday before they bow out. It could mean all sorts of things, but from a fundamental standpoint, I wonder if I could get Dustin's take on this.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Carl. So you're saying like what my understanding is of the reason why like Dash and certain coins like that went up, or
yeah, I guess. And then just long term, maybe a year or two out, where do you see that whole, POS system as opposed to POW, and the balance between those two? What do you kind of see shaping up?
Well, I'm not saying that. I wouldn't go as far to say as all POS or masternode coins are gonna just plummet and stay down at the bottom. But I think that some of the more well-established ones like Dash. I mean, if you look up on Google and find you Google search best coins to masternode or whatever, Dash is almost going to be in every single one of those articles. And so I think that there's some people probably looking at the market saying, well, Bitcoin's going back up, the halving's coming. And I think that, probably the rise of some of this is just the smart investors are finally buying back into those coins, getting their masternodes reestablished so that they can earn that, that passive income off that. And then I think that, the plan with most of these people is they cash the masternode out at the top. So not only, for them, I think the investment strategy is to get into that masternode coin like Dash that's well established, connect it to the network so that they can earn, some Dash on the side too, and then just do it all over again and sell at the top. For me, it's I really think it's that simple. And some of the other, like Pivx, I think that'll be another one that you probably see will pop off too. It's just as the market's going down, I think a lot of the wise investors just cashed out. You know what I mean? If said, hey, this is going to go down more, why am I going to hold this? Why not just sell it and then buy back in at the bottom and create another position? And for me, I think it just really is that simple. I'm not saying, the other thing is I'm not saying that masternodes won't be a thing in the future, but I think that if you're going to be a masternode coin, you're going to have to come at it from some kind of unique angle. Like you're going to have some kind of specific use case. You just can't be like another, we're just a fork of Dash, sign up, earn free coins. I think that you're going to have your marketing and your use case and your team and everything in order to be a successful masternode coin. You just ain't going to be. I think there's a lot of maybe blockchain companies, because it seemed like for a while there I was watching the Bitcoin talk and it was like every single day there was a new masternode coin coming out and people were just eating them up because who doesn't like the idea of being sold the fact that you get these masternode coins and it produces more masternode coins and the value is going to go up. Well, it's really not that simple. You just can't create a blockchain out of thin air and expect the price to go up for, with little work. And so if that team doesn't have the right intentions behind it to drive it home as a project, then I think that's where a lot of these masternodes failed. I think that, some of them were just scams to get people to buy in, and then the value went up even a little bit, and they sold out and used it as a way to accumulate more Bitcoin. In my opinion, now if somebody else has got something to add to that, please chime in.
No, I'm on board with that for
Can
sure
I
as
add
well.
something?
Yeah, go for it, Steve.
Okay. Well, I've studied, I guess, a number of these, and some have, how can I say, extremely high inflation or return or interest or yield or what have you. And I think that the misnomer by many investors is, hypothetically, if I'm making 100% a month, but the price of my asset is only down 20% a month, and I'm continuously selling, I'm actually doing quite well, because I understand that buying something for 100, but getting interest of 100% per month and selling at 80, at the end of the day, I'm doing well. The issue, it seems, is that you have many people, and I've looked on Discord, on Twitter, on Bitcoin Talk, on Reddit, where they seem to forget, if you buy something for 100 and you get 100% yield, and all of a sudden 6 months later the price is 50% lower, they're still hoping for that, I guess, flat price that's the same as they bought it for. And maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't, but I think that some of the investors might want to just look at kind of interest rate 101. And I don't mean that as a negative, but somebody has to look at the complete picture of the return. If you're getting a high interest rate, it's natural that the absolute price may be lower, but as long as someone is familiar with that, they can still do well in that space. It's he who is waiting to sell it at the same price that he bought at, he or she, and is getting an astronomical interest rate that just is waiting and waiting and waiting for that day, which really may not happen. Those are the ones that end up complaining, or at least from what I've seen over the past year.
Yeah, I just see it as a financial engineering schema or artifice versus like an actual, it's not like mathematically, it's not value creation. It's a mechanism that if there's no new money coming into this space, it's just all it does is produce supply of the underlying asset, which is price deflationary, right? So it's like when you look at, all you got to do is look at if there was a masternode, ETF or index. It's just been since there was the big price run up where everybody was buying anything and everything. It's just been a straight shot down, and it's funny. I would say that Dash would probably be if masternodes as an asset class are starting to change direction, get interest in them. Dash was for the longest time one of the first digital currencies out there, and for the longest time was one of the top 10 by market cap. So I would expect that to be the first to kind of get some price stability. But in terms of just the ways that Dash can be, people can put money in Dash. I remember back a couple of years ago where they actually had a over-the-counter version that you could actually buy in Dash or invest in. It's called NPPTF, which is their Pink Sheets basically ticker. These guys have all of the bells and buzzers in terms of like financial engineering maturation for like a masternode. So anybody can invest in Dash versus all the other kind of masternodes. They're kind of harder to invest in, but Dash is everywhere. So that's if the space is starting to turn and money's coming into it, then I would expect Dash to be the first to show price appreciation.
Hey, Coin Genius folks, this is Samson. The other day, this is last Monday, because New Year's came on it was on a Tuesday or something. So I didn't know what time of the year it was. And I was so confused because it wasn't Friday, it wasn't Saturday, it wasn't Sunday for 2 weeks, it seemed. And so when I'm thinking about why is the market responding as it is, sort of it is I'm thinking that January 6th was technically the first day of the new year. That's that Monday everyone actually got back to work. They got over the holiday festivities. They got rid of their family members. They kicked them out, sent them on the road. And so they're sitting down at their desk and they're thinking about their New Year's resolutions. And as part of that New Year's resolutions, because in 2019, you had all of the hype of 2017, 18 tempered rather by some of the pragmatism of 2019, particularly on the regulatory front. And so it could be that from a matter of timing, New Year's just fell on a weird day. People got back to their offices on the 6th, on January 6th, that first Monday, and they decided they were going to go through or knock off some of their New Year's resolutions. And so the people who'd been hearing about cryptos, who'd been hearing about these digital assets, they actually just started working their way through their New Year's resolutions and actually getting into the market for the first time. It'd be really interesting to see how many new accounts got opened and then how many accounts that were stale or stagnant for, let's say, the last 3 to 6 months actually got opened in the last or reactivated from January 6th through the 12th. Because it might just be that it's just a timing thing. Humans are creatures of habits. And I think that perhaps they decided to act upon their New Year's resolutions. So that could be one reason why we've seen such an uptick in the last couple of weeks in the cryptocurrency markets, in addition to some of the political elements that help contribute and inspire people to, hey, let's look for alternative financing. Let's look for alternative investment opportunities, because that was part of their New Year's resolution.
Yeah, I'd agree. That's a very good point.
I think also too, it's that time in the market again for the market cycle to reset. And, it's just, we've been going down for so long that it's just time that, everybody's finally starting to, the price of Bitcoin started pulling back up a little bit. And I think that some of, just other people are just starting to look at altcoins again and start to build their positions again and get ready for, just the next round. Almost all the altcoins that I looked at, they're just at their all-time bottoms, almost 100% retracement. And so it's just time for people to start building positions in some of these other altcoins. If I had to take a wild guess, my intuition tells me that some of these projects probably have big major updates and partnerships that they want to release, and they're just sitting on them, waiting on them. And it'll be interesting to see. I think some of these projects, they probably did cash out at the top in 2018, 2017. And, they funded their projects and paid their developers and continued working on their projects and kind of in the quiet. And, it'd be interesting to see which, I think that those projects that are doing that are going to be the ones that outshine all the other projects combined. Again, if somebody's got something to add to that, I'd love to hear your feedback on that. But if I had to, that's kind of what my intuition's telling me, is that some of these projects are waiting to release some major updates and partnerships. Like they already have everything lined up. Even they probably even have the press release typed up. Just waiting for that right moment to, drop that news when it's, when the sentiment is, being positive. So that way they get, they kind of get that boost in their coin.
Dustin, I would agree with you, not only from not only from all the points that you just mentioned, but also from a logistics standpoint, at least in the US, the holidays from a development perspective, you almost never get to deploy something out in December. Even in startups, people are gone. There's just a lot of lag and downtime. I think that even Dennis could kind of echo their sentiment over on Wall Street where they kind of shut down. And you see these kind of cyclical natures of things. I did think it was really interesting that, going into Q4 was kind of higher prices, and then the push down all through Q4 to the point where, basically everything was on sale, only for it to come back, after the beginning of the year to bounce back up to the prices we were used to seeing. So to me, that shows some level of, what Steve calls, he's going to have to go through all the terms again. But essentially that there is a cyclical nature of Wall Street. There's a cyclical nature of, development companies. And these holidays are something that we should definitely be keeping an eye on for the roadmap for 2020 as well, just to see if there is similar or opposite inverse behavior.
Hey, Christina, this is Samson again. And so the cyclical cycle, it just clicked in my head when you said that, because I was like, oh yes, gym memberships. Everybody gets back to the gym in January, but by April, they've all forgotten how to do that, except
There you go.
except the people who are committed to that beach body come June. And so I think that might be as part of that New Year's resolution, people came back into the market, into the cryptocurrency market, because they're much like the people who are like, hey, let's get back into the gym. Hey, let's get back into this investing thing. But I think we'll see come April, how many new people stayed, meaning there'll be a little bit of dip, but hopefully or ideally, there'll be more people who are like, hey, we're going to actually do this for the long run and be in it for the long run. Go to the gym also.
Well, I would love to empower those folks who are ready to get back into it with really awesome real-time metrics so that they can make better decisions.
Yeah, if you guys had because I look at my Fitbit all the time to tell me what my metrics are for working out. And so no, I do, because I got a Coin Genius update, a text message the other day, and I was like, oh, that's
yes,
helpful.
you did.
So yeah, we should send more of those out. It was just saying how it was a $1.1 billion transfer had been done for $80. And I was like, oh, that's just good to know.
That is true. Okay, so it looks like we had a couple of folks have to rotate off here. We still have a bit of time to go over weekly analysis, trends, or any long or short calls that you guys would like to make. We've got our newsletter coming up that's going to be released on January 20th. So if there's any predictions that you guys would like to make, or use case items or just metrics to watch, now would be a good time to kind of call those out so we can make sure they're included in the newsletter.
This is Samson. I've been following Popcom with Don Dixon. So they have a vending machine solution. They went to CES, the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas last week, and they demoed their kiosk. And so you walk up to it and you pay with your face. It's facial recognition as a credit as your method of payment. And so
Nice.
The reason I bring, yeah. And so one of their applications is the cannabis market, because once hey, this is Christina, she's X number of years old, you can actually sell that person for recreational cannabis, which is super interesting. But when they did their crowdfunding raise, they actually issued their XPOP tokens, and so they issued 55,000 shares of traditional stock plus XPOP tokens. I think that the company itself is in a really good position because they've got contracts, they've got product. I really liked what I saw at their demos for the CES. So I'm interested to see how is their token going to perform when people can start using it in the kiosk, and will there be a secondary market for that? Because their tokens were only issued to people who invested in their Jobs Act Reg CF deal. So I'm pretty interested and excited about that. I don't know if that's
I dig it. I would. It absolutely is. I would put that under tracking for some level of KYC. Any tokens that are associated with KYC and blockchain interoperability, therefore, are going to be valuable in the next revolution here.
Mm-hmm. And I played a game from Aircoin. So they have AirX is their AIRX is their coin. It's the augmented reality. It's like Pokemon Go. You walk around and picking up different types of coins. And so I was walking around DC recently and doing it. It's really a two-man sport because otherwise you're gonna walk into like a traffic or something. But otherwise, I like the game. I thought it was a very interesting game and interesting application. And so I don't know if we do reviews of esports or e-games that have tokens. I would you can go download their app, Android, Apple. I think it's really cool. Their token has got it may be at like $500 trading volume total. So it's like tenths of a penny, but they have a working product. And I love things that have working products. So I think it's worth checking
Absolutely.
out.
Nice. Well, that's a good recommendation. I will also throw my hat in the ring and say that I have downloaded the Coin app, which is the XYO token, which is geomining, very similar to your Waze or how Google is already tracking your geolocation by giving it, and they've gamified it slightly where hopefully you're not doing this while you're driving, but if you're a passenger and you go over a certain geolocation, if you're one of the first 200 to claim it, you get a reward on coins. And I do it a lot when I'm, in an Uber on the way to the airport, and also in the plane for as long as it will pick up tokens there. So just interesting things that you can do to kind of earn tokens and potentially compensation doing the things that you're already doing. So that's definitely something that Coin Genius will be calling out in the platform within 2020.
Nice.
Well, excellent. Well, we are getting here close to the end. Does anyone have anything else to add? Dennis, would you like to weigh in here?
I mean, I'll confirm that, generally there's a lot of freezes put on, not temperature-wise, because it's unseasonably hot where I am at the moment. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of code freezes, probably kick in the first week of December. So you're right, there's not a ton of innovation going on at that point. Looking around various markets, talking to a couple of people in funds, they're looking at some of these massive moves. They're looking at certainly non-US based funds that are based in Asia and emerging markets. We're looking around at, not stellar returns last year, some of the funds that I've worked with, and they look at some of these incredible numbers coming out of, the rise in Dash. They're wondering, like, is that something that we can do? And they're really weighing the maturity of the market. They're looking at it and saying, look, if this is multi-level marketing, then we needed to be in earlier. Nobody really cares if you return 500% and there's the liquidities there and it's legal. No investor is going to turn around and say no, unless you're in an ethical. There are certain ethical investment funds that are out there. But there is definitely, the market that we all came into this to try to create, where we can actually put validity and maturity around the market, where we can say, this is a true trade. This is a real market out there. This information is real. This is not wash trading. This is not some Ponzi scheme. That market is still there, and it is, it's a multi-billion-dollar market. It's just, how do we get to it? So I have noticed some people looking at some of these, probably more towards the crypto markets this year than before, because a lot of them do feel that, the maturity of the market. I mean, it's obviously, it's a chronology question. At some point it goes mature. At what point do you get into it to capture that?
I would agree. I think there's also something to be said that we're still at very, nascent technologies, and that use cases are going to define adoption just as much as, seeing the returns on the value of the token itself. For example, I know that Ripple is going to be picked up by IBM, and there's just a ton of things that are going to be coming out in the news articles in 2020 that I think will also drive a lot of attraction to the space and hopefully to Coin Genius, since we will have all of those metrics in an easily digestible manner.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day, and he's big asset manager, and he's, his view, and look, he cares about returns. That's all he cares about. And he was saying that, if Satoshi Nakamoto had have actually come out and stood behind when he originally authored all of this stuff, that the market would have been mature an awful lot earlier. And, I can counter that with, but would it have been as accepted, and would people have adopted it? And his view is, like, as a pure, complete, unabashed capitalist, if the guy behind it had come out and said, look, this is why I did it, and it was to make money, financial markets would have adopted it straight away.
Well, they've got that with Craig Wright now. I mean, and if he can unlock that, then, there's no way to prove that he's not Satoshi Nakamoto until Satoshi Nakamoto actually comes out. So perhaps that will be another event trigger that we should be tracking, just for legitimacy, right?
That's why maybe that, I won't call it the perfect storm, but certainly it's a weather forecast that somebody might have got right for once.
I would agree. Well, thanks, Dennis. Okay, so anyone else? Carl, would you like to jump in here? We've got a few minutes and then we will wrap up.
Yeah, I don't have much to say this go around. I think, like, from a macro perspective, fully zoomed out, what's Bitcoin going to do next? I just have a feeling that it's still, I mean, at the very worst, will be bouncing off of parabolic support, but I've been saying that for a couple weeks, and we did see it in the two recent, bottoms, so to speak. And that's a narrative that a lot of people have shared in the space for, I think, a year or two now, probably, is kind of this parabolic bottom idea. But I mean, aside from that, no, not really. Everything that everyone said has been really great today.
Awesome. I will also note that in the last week or so, I've seen more articles with parabolic in the headline than I ever have before. So I think you guys are really onto something there. It's starting to echo throughout the community.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining Genius Wednesdays. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at info@coingenius.ai. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.